Archangel Michael is in tears. He's been trying to warn you for hours. This is your final chance. Don't skip. If you ignore this, you'll regret it deeply. You didn't land here by accident. Something in you paused, even if just for a second, and that pause matters. In a world where everything moves fast and noise never seems to stop, this moment feels different. Quieter, steadier, like a hand gently on your shoulder saying, "Stay." You might have been scrolling, distracted, or simply trying to escape the weight of the day, but this isn't random. What felt like another video is actually an interruption filled with purpose. Listen closely. This is not about fear, and it's not about pressure. It's about protection. You're not being chased, you're being covered. There's a difference between panic and urgency, and what you're feeling right now is the kind that steadies your breathing instead of stealing it. You thought you were just passing time, but heaven calls this a moment of alignment. You thought nothing was happening, yet something has been quietly shifting in your favor. And there's something else you need to know. Something will come back to because it matters more than you realize. The warning didn't come late by mistake. There's a reason it seemed delayed, and that reason changes how you see everything. So stay with me, because the very fact that you're here means this message is already doing its work, and what you almost missed is only the beginning. Take a breath, let your guard down, and allow this moment to meet you where you are, because clarity often arrives softly before it speaks loudly. You are exactly where needed today. You can probably trace it back to a moment that felt small at the time, a hesitation before saying yes, a quiet unease you couldn't quite explain, a thought that kept returning when you tried to ignore it. Those nudges didn't shout, they whispered. And because they were gentle, you told yourself they were nothing. But deep down, you knew something was trying to get your attention. Maybe it showed up as restlessness in your chest or a sudden pause in conversations, like an invisible hand pressing lightly on the brakes. You called it stress, overthinking, just another symptom of being tired. But what you labeled anxiety, heaven recognized as a signal. What felt like internal noise was actually guidance trying to cut through the chaos. Notice how the same themes kept circling back. Conversations that echoed each other, decisions that felt heavier than usual, moments where your spirit leaned back even when logic pushed forward. This isn't about you being confused, it's about you being sensitive. You weren't losing clarity, you were being invited to slow down. And here's what makes this moment important. You're not in a crisis, but you are at a crossroads. One path keeps repeating old patterns, comfortable but draining. The other asks for awareness, a small shift that changes direction before things become heavier. Crossroads don't always look dramatic. Sometimes they feel like a quiet decision no one else can see. There's a reason these nudges feel familiar, and we're going to uncover it soon. The one pattern that proves this isn't coincidence. When you see it, everything starts making sense and the weight you've been carrying begins to lift. For now, just recognize this. You're not late and you're not alone. The warning you almost missed is still speaking, and the fact that you're listening now means you're right on time. In the next moments, we'll slow this down together, because once you notice what's been repeating, you won't be able to unsee it, and that awareness is where peace begins. So don't brush this off the way you did before. Let yourself stay present even if part of you wants to minimize it. This isn't pressure, it's preparation. And as we move forward, you'll start to see how every small nudge was leading you toward clarity instead of confusion. Stay with me, because the pieces are about to connect, and when they do, you'll understand why this moment matters more than you realized. And that realization is where the shift truly begins for you today. You may have noticed how ordinary moments started behaving differently. Plans that once moved smoothly suddenly slowed down. Calls got delayed. Doors that seemed open just weeks ago felt strangely resistant. At first, it looked like inconvenience, like life throwing random obstacles in your path. But look closer, because what felt like blockage may actually be protection wearing everyday clothes. Not every closed door is rejection. Some are guarded entrances. Not every delay is denial. Some are divine timing creating space you couldn't see yet. The meeting that didn't happen, the message that never got sent, the sudden change of schedule, these weren't signs that you were forgotten. They were gentle interventions, subtle course corrections keeping you from stepping into places that would have drained more than they gave. Think about the pauses that frustrated you. The moments when progress stalled and you questioned your direction. You wondered if you were being held back, if something was wrong with you or your efforts. But what if you weren't being blocked at all? What if you were being shielded? There's a difference between a wall meant to stop you and a hand placed in front of you to keep you safe. One rejects, the other protects. And here's the reassurance you need to hear clearly. None of this means you've been abandoned. Silence doesn't equal absence. Slowness doesn't equal neglect. In fact, the very disruptions that unsettled you are evidence that you're being watched over more closely than you realized. When things pause, it's often because something unseen is being rearranged in your favor. There's also a shift you might not have words for yet, a subtle change in the spiritual atmosphere that has been unfolding recently. We'll talk about it soon because understanding what changed will help you see why the timing feels so specific right now. For the moment, just recognize that the pattern of pauses isn't random. It's intentional and it's leading somewhere meaningful. So instead of reading these signs as setbacks, begin to see them as signals. The path hasn't disappeared, it's being refined. And as we move forward, the next piece will help you connect these moments into a picture you can finally understand. Stay attentive, because what seems ordinary is about to reveal something extraordinary. The clarity you have been asking for is closer than it appears, and the next insight will show you how these protected deeders fit together. Keep listening because once the pattern is visible, peace starts settling deeper than before today. You felt it repeating even if you didn't have language for it. The same kind of situations showing up with different faces, the same emotional weight arriving at different times, the same quiet hesitation before choices that later proved heavier than expected. When you step back, it begins to look less like coincidence and more like a rhythm, one that has been trying to guide you rather than trap you. Here is the pattern that answers the question you've been carrying, the one that proves this isn't random. Each time you were about to step into something that would cost you more peace than it gave, something interrupted the flow. A delay, a change, a sudden loss of interest, a door that wouldn't open no matter how hard you pushed. The interruption always came before the misstep, never after. You thought those moments were setbacks, proof that things weren't working out. But look again. What if they were strategic pauses placed exactly where you needed breathing room? What felt like friction was actually precision. What felt like disappointment was often quiet protection steering you away from paths that would have drained your energy, your time, or your trust. Notice the timing. The interruption rarely made sense in the moment, but later you could see how it shifted everything. You were slowed down just enough to reconsider, redirected just enough to notice another option, held back just enough to avoid unnecessary pain. That's not chaos, that's care. Not confusion, but intentional guidance unfolding one step at a time. This is where the meaning deepens because once you recognize the pattern, you start to see your story differently. You weren't failing as often as you thought. You were being rerouted. The pauses were not punishments, they were positioning. The moments that felt like loss were often quiet rescues, even when you couldn't see what you were being rescued from. Take a second and reflect on your own timeline. Think about the time something didn't work out and how later you realized you had been spared from stress, conflict, or regret. Let your mind walk back through those memories. The more you look, the clearer the thread becomes, weaving through your life with quiet consistency. You're not being asked to overanalyze, you're being invited to recognize. Awareness replaces worry when you see that these interruptions have been consistent, not cruel. They've been signals, not obstacles. And if they've been this faithful in the past, it means you can trust what's happening now, even if you don't have every answer yet. So the next time you feel that pause, you'll understand it differently. Not as resistance, but as redirection. Not as delay, but as alignment. And as this awareness settles in, you're ready to understand why this warning matters now, because the reason behind it brings peace than you expect. Now that you can see the pattern, the question becomes clearer. Why now? Why did this message reach you at this exact moment and not earlier when things first started shifting? The answer is gentler than you might expect. This timing isn't about correction, it's about alignment. You're not being called out, you're being called forward. The delay you once questioned was never neglect. It was protection unfolding at a pace you could carry. If everything had been revealed sooner, it might have felt overwhelming, like trying to read a map before you even knew the destination. But step by step, as your awareness grew, the message moved closer, waiting until you were ready to recognize it instead of resist it. What felt late was actually precise. This is where the atmosphere around you comes into focus. Something has been shifting quietly, like a change in air pressure before the sky clears. You may not have seen it directly, but you felt it, an increasing sensitivity, a deeper need for peace, a stronger pull toward clarity instead of distraction. That shift is why the warning could finally land. You're in a space now where guidance feels like support, not interruption. You thought you were falling behind, watching others move ahead while you waited in uncertainty. But what looked like delay was positioning. You weren't being sidelined, You are being set in place for what fits you better. There's a difference between being late and being prepared. Late carries shame, preparation carries intention. And what's happening in your life carries intention. Let this settle into your heart. You are not being scolded. There's no accusation in this moment, no hidden disappointment hovering over you. The tone of this message is protection, not pressure. Just as a hand reaches out instinctively when you're about to step too close to an edge, this warning exists to steady you, not to frighten you. It's reassurance wrapped in urgency, not fear wrapped in judgment. The truth is, you've been growing into this awareness for a while. The pauses, the repeated nudges, the subtle changes in how you respond to things, all of it has been preparing you to hear this without panic. Timing matters because readiness matters. Guidance lands best when your heart can recognize it as help rather than criticism. So instead of asking why it didn't come sooner, consider what it means that it came now. It means you're capable of understanding more. It means you're stepping into a season where clarity replaces confusion, where decisions come from calm instead of pressure. This is not about fixing you, it's about supporting you as you move forward with greater awareness. And as this realization settles, you'll start to sense the next step isn't complicated. It's about learning how to walk with this awareness in a grounded way, which is exactly what we're about to explore together. As this awareness settles in, the most important thing you can do is stay grounded. Discernment is not about scanning every room for threats or questioning every relationship. It's about listening inward with calm instead of tension, noticing what brings peace and what quietly drains it. You don't need to become suspicious to become wise. You only need to become present. There's a difference between awareness and paranoia. Awareness feels steady, like standing on solid ground. Paranoia feels restless, like trying to run on shifting sand. One invites clarity, the other steals it. Right now, you're being invited into the first. You're learning to pause before reacting, to breathe before deciding, to let your spirit speak before the noise of urgency takes over. Boundaries are part of this protection, but they don't have to be dramatic or confrontational. Sometimes a boundary is simply giving yourself more time. Sometimes it's choosing rest instead of pushing through exhaustion. Sometimes it's allowing silence where you once felt pressured to explain everything. These choices aren't selfish, they're stabilizing. They create space where your mind can settle and your heart can hear clearly again. Remember, wisdom rarely shouts. It usually arrives as a gentle knowing, a quiet sense of not this or not now. When you honor that feeling, you're not rejecting people or opportunities, you're respecting your own peace. And peace is not a luxury, it's guidance in its most recognizable form. So let yourself slow down without guilt. Drink water, take a deeper breath, step back when something feels rushed. These small acts are not avoidance, they are alignment. They help you respond instead of react, observe instead of assume. And the more you practice this, the more stable everything begins to feel inside you. There's also a simple shift coming into view, one that can restore your sense of peace faster than you expect. We're about to talk about it because once you understand this shift, you'll realize how accessible calm really is, even in uncertain moments. Carry this with you as we move forward. You don't have to figure everything out at once. You only have to stay grounded enough to recognize what feels true. And in the next step, you'll see how one small change can open the door to the steadiness you've been craving. Stay with me because the clarity you're building here becomes the foundation for what you'll do next. And that's where real relief begins to take shape for you now. Now that you're grounded, this is where the message becomes personal because awareness isn't just something you feel, it's something you practice. You don't need a dramatic change or a perfect plan. The first step is simpler than you think. Pause on purpose. Not because everything is falling apart, but because everything is trying to come into focus. Take a slow breath and notice what feels heavy. Not the stories around it, just the weight itself. Sometimes clarity begins the moment you stop carrying what was never meant to stay. You don't have to force anything out. Just acknowledge what's been sitting on your shoulders. When you name it, you loosen its hold. When you release it, even quietly, you create space for something steadier to move in. This is the shift we hinted at, the one that restores your sense of peace. It isn't a new strategy or a complicated routine. It's intentional stillness paired with trust. Stillness tells your mind it doesn't have to chase every answer. Trust tells your heart it doesn't have to brace for every outcome. Together, they quiet the noise enough for clarity to rise naturally instead of being forced. Notice the contrast here. Striving says you must push harder, figure everything out immediately, keep moving or risk falling behind. Surrender says you can breathe, listen, and let the next step reveal itself at the right pace. Striving tightens your chest. Surrender steadies it. One exhausts you, the other restores you. And restoration is where your strength actually grows. You are not a passive observer in this moment. You are an active participant in your own peace. Every time you choose to pause instead of panic, to reflect instead of react, you reinforce the path that leads you forward with clarity. Small choices matter more than dramatic ones. A quiet not today to what drains you. A gentle yes to what brings calm. These are the movements that reshape your direction. Invite clarity the same way you would invite fresh air into a room, by opening a space for it. You don't need to control what comes through, you only need to be willing to receive it. And as you practice this, you'll notice decisions feel less heavy, your thoughts less crowded, your spirit more settled than before. Hold on to that feeling, because what unfolds next is the reassurance your heart has been waiting for. The reminder that peace isn't just possible, it's already beginning to take root as you step into what's ahead. As you step forward with this new awareness, you may not see everything change overnight, but you will begin to feel the difference. In the coming days, the heaviness that once followed you like a shadow starts to lose its grip. It won't always be dramatic. Sometimes peace arrives quietly, like a deep breath you didn't realize you needed, like a moment of calm where your thoughts finally settle instead of racing. Clarity begins to replace confusion. Decisions that once felt tangled start to feel simpler, not because every detail is revealed, but because your inner compass feels steadier. You'll notice how what once felt urgent begins to feel manageable, and what once felt overwhelming becomes something you can face with a calmer heart. Sooner than you expect, you'll recognize that you're responding differently, less reactive, more grounded. Imagine the fog slowly lifting from a path you thought had disappeared. The way forward doesn't have to shout to be real. It only needs to become visible enough for your next step. You may also sense the subtle loosening of pressures that once felt tight, like chains gently releasing their hold. Situations that seemed stuck begin to shift, and opportunities that felt distant start to come into view, not forced open but quietly accessible. Doors don't always swing wide with noise. Sometimes they open softly, almost unnoticed at first. But you'll feel the difference in your spirit. More space, more ease, more confidence in your direction. This is the kind of change that builds from the inside out, steady and sustainable instead of rushed and fragile. Let this be clear. These are not rigid predictions or timelines you have to measure yourself against. This message is reassurance, not pressure. It's a reminder that movement toward peace is already underway, even if it unfolds gently. And as that calm continues to grow, you'll feel ready to anchor it deeply, which is exactly where we're going next together. Take a slow breath with me and let your shoulders soften. In this moment, you don't have to perform, explain, or prove anything. You're simply here, and that is enough. May a sense of calm begin to settle over you now, like gentle light surrounding every place that has felt tense or uncertain. Where your thoughts have been crowded, may there be space. Where your heart has felt heavy, may there be relief. I speak peace over your mind, clear, steady, and unshaken. I speak protection over your path, that every step forward is guided with wisdom you can trust. You are not wandering alone through confusion. You are being led with care, even when you cannot see the full picture yet. Let that truth rest softly in your spirit. Feel the weight beginning to lift, little by little, like something you've carried for too long finally being set down. Let your breath return to a natural rhythm, slow and steady, reminding your body that it is safe to relax. You are seen in ways you may not always recognize, supported in ways that don't always announce themselves, and loved in ways that remain constant through every season. Hold this moment of stillness with gratitude, even if it's quiet, even if it's small. Peace doesn't have to be loud to be real. And as this sense of calm settles deeper within you, carry it forward with hope, because the next step is simply to let it continue beyond this moment. You came into this moment with a warning echoing in your spirit, and now you leave with understanding resting in your heart. What began as uncertainty has softened into clarity. What felt urgent now feels steady. You've moved from tension into peace, not because everything outside changed instantly, but because something inside you settled into trust. Carry this awareness with you gently. You don't have to watch life with fear or second-guess every step. Just stay attentive in the same calm way you feel right now, open, grounded, and willing to listen when your spirit nudges you. Guidance is not here to overwhelm you, it's here to walk with you. If this moment resonated, take a second to anchor it. In the comments, write, "I receive peace and clear direction," Let it be a simple declaration, a reminder you can return to whenever you need it. And if you feel led, share this with someone who might need reassurance today, or stay connected here so we can continue building a space of encouragement together. Not out of obligation, but out of community. You're not alone on this path, and you never have been.